Valentine's Day, everybody. And with that, I'd like to welcome Council members Cabral and Enmeyer. Thank you for attending. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Beaches, Parks, and Recreation Commission this Tuesday, February 14th of 2023 at 6 p.m. Amelia Weinstein will be leading the Pledge of Allegiance for us tonight.
If you can all stand. Place your right hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Amelia. All right, we'll move to roll call. Susan Ambrose?
Here.
Jennifer Elliott?
Present.
Rob Firestein?
Here.
Harold Formaster?
Here.
Amelia Weinstein?
Here.
Jordan Campopiano?
Here.
And myself, here, Teresa Rousseau. So we have a full attendance and established quorum. Our first item today on the agenda will be a special presentation from the Community Development Director. I'll give you guys the floor.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Cecilia Gallardo-Daly, the Community Development Director. I'm just going to provide a brief introduction and some context for the subject of the presentation tonight. The protection and enhancement of the city's beaches continues to be a top priority for the San Clemente City Council. The city is actively implementing a comprehensive strategy of plans, policies, and projects to address existing shoreline erosion and promote long-term coastal resiliency. In the fall, we'll implement the first phase of a 50-year public beach restoration program along with our federal and state partners, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the California State Parks. We are also exploring opportunities to retain this sand on our beaches for as long as possible to make the most effective and efficient use of this sand. So with that in mind, the city has initiated a project to identify feasible solutions to promote long-term resiliency of the city's shoreline by retaining and reducing the loss of sand along the city's beaches. You're going to hear more about this tonight in the presentation, but this project builds off the efforts of the Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment, which we prepared in 2019, and the Coastal Resiliency Plan, which the City Council adopted in 2021. So to talk about the nature-based coastal resiliency feasibility project, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Meyerhoff. She's our local coastal program manager, along with Moffitt and Nichols, our consultants on this project. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission Chair and Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight to introduce the City of San Clemente Nature-Based Coastal Resiliency Project Feasibility Study. And that is a very long title, so I might just refer to it as the study later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. The purpose of this project, as Cecilia pointed out, is to implement some of the key recommendations contained in the Coastal Resiliency Plan and Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment that were prepared over the last few years. Next slide, please. There are two primary goals of this project which are outlined here. The number one goal of this project is, of course, to advance shoreline protection in the city of San Clemente, and also to have a process that is stakeholder-driven and backed by science, engineering, and economics. Next slide, please. The project is partially funded by a Coastal Commission grant received by the city in 2022. You may recall a presentation you heard last fall about the shoreline monitoring program that was reinitiated, and that effort is also funded by this very same grant. You may also recall that the shoreline monitoring program is a comprehensive program of shoreline monitoring from as far north as Doheny State Beach and as far south as Cottons Point. And data will be collected at 12 different transects each May and each October of the year. And all of that information will be synthesized in an annual report that will then be made available to the public. Next slide, please. So the study has several key objectives which are identified here. The number one objective of the study is, of course, to identify feasible, permittable, nature-based infrastructure projects to reduce not only current erosion problems, but also longer-term erosion that's anticipated to be exacerbated by sea level rise. In addition, we want to design a project that complements the upcoming Army Corps of Engineers 50-year beach replenishment project. We want to make sure that that sand stays along the city's beaches for as long as possible, so we're looking to complement that project. The goal being to maximize the sand retention along the shoreline, to widen the sandy beach, and to make the most effective use of the public resources and dollars that are being appropriated for that project. Another key study objective is to identify multiple benefits. So of course, our main benefit is shoreline protection, but we're also looking for opportunities to generate what are called co-benefits, both in terms of public recreation and also habitat benefit. The last major objective is to coordinate and collaborate with the ongoing Orange County Parks Coastal Resiliency Study so that we can have some economies of scale with respect to various deliverables that are generated by that study as well as ours. And of course, Inclinity is not in a vacuum. We have a lot of regional partners that we are interested in continuing to work with. Next slide, please. So tonight is the first of several public outreach meetings that we will be conducting. We have another meeting later this year that will be to release a draft report on the conceptual designs that we're going to bring forward, and those will be made available for public review and comment because, again, this is going to be largely a stakeholder-driven study, so input from this commission and the public and others will be very important as we move forward into the draft feasibility study and then the final feasibility study. Of course, we will have additional meetings as needed, focused meetings, or other meetings as directed and as needed. Next slide, please. So this is our scheduled milestones with corresponding dates, and this basically matches what we submitted as part of our grant application. I'm not going to run through all the major milestones here, but I will just point out that we are expecting to have the draft conceptual design reports later this year, and again, we'll have a public meeting associated with that, the release of that document. We started our efforts in November of last year, bringing the consulting team on board, and we are required by the grant terms to complete all the work products and utilize all the funds by the end of December of 2025. We realize 2025 is a long time away, and so we're doing our best to accelerate this project and expedite it where we can so that we can get to the next phase, which would be preliminary design, environmental review and permitting, and then obviously construction following after that. So again, we're doing our best to expedite, and to that end, we have our final feasibility report. We're now targeting June 2025 rather than December 2025. We will continue to look for other opportunities to shorten or compress the overall project schedule. Next slide, please. Lastly, we just wanted to point out that we have set up an email so people can sign up to receive all public notices of future meetings and the release of draft documents as they're made available. Tonight's presentation will also be published on the city website. There's an LCP, which is Local Coastal Program. There's an LCP web page with this project, the Shoreline Monitoring Project, and the LCP related efforts too. So there's a lot of information there, and if you haven't already signed up, I encourage you to sign up just to stay in the loop going forward on this project. And with that, I will turn the next part of the presentation over to the consulting engineering team and Chris Webb with Moffitt and Nichol. Thank you.
Hi folks, I'm Chris Webb with Moffitt & Nichol, and I'm the project manager of the consulting team that was hired to help the city with this project. So Miley, why don't you go ahead and advance the slide if you don't mind, and I'll just kind of give you a pie sign as we go through. So, what we brought to you is kind of a smart army, an experienced army, if you will. We gathered a fairly large team, larger than we typically bring to bear, because what we want to do is bring out of the box ideas. We want to bring experience from a broad array of areas, if we can, to bear on San Clemente, because San Clemente obviously is important, but it's critically situated in such a way that there's problems that are difficult to solve. So we like those that can solve difficult problems to contribute. So that's just a list of the consultants that are out there. You can advance, Miley, thank you very much. And so we received this slide from somebody at the south end of the city a couple of years ago, and immediately we started chuckling because if you could probably see that the train is on the track right in the center of the photograph. And this is enough, it's unnerving enough if you're a train engineer or a passenger to wonder if the train actually waits and times the sets before it goes around Cotton's Point to try to, go around there during the lull. There was photographs of the same site several years before that would show a nice white beach. So we know it's a big contrasting condition at the south end of town. Go ahead and advance. And then at the other end of town, North Beach, there's, on the eroded beach with a lot of cobble, and there's this concessions building, a public restroom facility that is kind of sitting there suspended in the air. And I would suspect it affects business, and I would suspect it affects the function of the building. I was there myself in the early 90s when there was plenty of beach there. And there was people playing volleyball, and there was a tot lot that you could barely see, but there's really no volleyball available to be played. And so these are just examples of what's going on right now. Go ahead and advance. And so the lifeguard headquarters building is another example of a place that's pretty much threatened and vulnerable right now. They have to board the windows up during the wrong season when they should be able to look out the windows and try to do their job and see what's going on. So I know there's efforts to potentially consider relocating this, and so what we'd like to do is create a condition in which these things can, if it's sought for these to remain on the beach, that they can remain on the beach and still function. Okay, so we want to have San Clemente have a beach for as long of a period of time as possible. Go ahead and advance the next slide if you wouldn't mind. So, a while ago we started talking to a whole group of people. We started with the county, and we realized after a short conversation that San Clemente is not alone. San Clemente is one of many groups and agencies that have the same problem in the same area. From Dana Point, basically the harbor, down to San Onofre State Beach. There's all these different interests that have the same problem. So why not band together was what we came up with. So we started talking to the county about, hey, it's a good idea, build a collaborative partnership with all these folks, because you will be heard more easily at the state level with a larger group. Individually, it's hard to be heard at the state level, and the state level is where the money tends to be and tends to come from. So we started talking to San Clemente a long time ago about this stuff, and the County of Orange is doing this to some extent, so we're going to continue to collaborate with them and continue to try to stimulate them and be a part of that process too. So this is just an example of others that are out there, and I know you're already aware of this. You can advance, please. So as part of this specific study, what the city has done is they've lined up a set of tasks that we need to complete. And this is just a list of tasks, and it basically starts off with, we know there's a problem in a lot of different places, but where's the worst of it, okay? And why is it the worst? And is there a place that we can identify where maybe there's a solution that we could offer up that would not just benefit that one site, but also adjacent areas, farther down the coast in either direction from that site, get more benefit from your investment. So we're trying to identify, what's going on throughout the city. What are the processes that cause the problems? Obviously, the second bullet or item is to do public outreach, which is this meeting. And this is a stakeholder-driven process where we welcome input. And we've already got a lot of really interesting ideas, real creative ideas, out-of-the-box stuff, fascinating stuff that we are very highly interested in. So we've heard some input already. We welcome more, so please keep it coming. We're going to work with the Coastal Commission, of course, because they're the funding agency along with the city. And our charge is to come up with nature-based solutions. That's pretty tough, but we can do it. We've done it in other places, and we can do it for you. And the list is fairly long, and there's no parameters right now on the limitations that we're working with. It's an open sky horizon type of thing right now. We will identify the pathway to get there, and that means how to get money, how to get permits, how to do the engineering, things like that. what data might need to be generated to make it happen, and then we'll do enough preliminary designing so that you can go to the next step, so you have on paper some concepts, hopefully several, at several different places that show it in plan view and in cross-section, where we can calculate the amount of material that would be needed, where it might come from, how much it might cost, etc., how long it might take to build it. Go to the next slide. What we typically do with these things is we have a certain reach of coast, and it's pretty long. We like to chop it up into manageable subcompartments, or reaches. So this is just an example of some possible reaches. We've already kind of changed our thinking on some of these, but we like to, look at the north end of town kind of separately from the south end of town, because geographically they're separated, and there might be different things going on in those two locations. The center of the city is going to have a project, which is absolutely critical. The fact that the Corps of Engineers plans to come in here and put sand on your beach in short order is very important, because what that does is that acts as the source or the seed for nature-based projects. What we might end up saying at some point is, we should supplement that with more. And maybe the supplementation of the city with more sand might come from the partnership with the other agencies that we showed you on the list, Orange County, etc. So there might be more sand that we might recommend be put in besides what the Corps might do. So in evaluating the different segments of the city that might need something, we look at a laundry list of data and information and processes, and that's kind of the list on the right-hand side of the slide. What's happening with the sand? Is it leaving? Is it coming? Is it passing through swiftly? Are the beaches narrowing? Are they dropping in elevation? We think they are. Pretty much all over the place. Different rates in different places. Why is that happening? What can be done to offset it? Are there sensitive habitat within the city that could be a constraint to what we might want to do, but maybe a motivation to actually enhance and make it a place that is attractive to funding? The funding agencies like living habitat-based types of projects. So if we can make this a shoreline advance project, not just protection, but advancing the shoreline and raising it up, and then creating additional habitat, it might be a winner. So that's the kind of balance we're trying to strike. You can go to the next slide. In looking at these critical erosion hotspots, it's a matter of looking at what exists out there that's already been collected in terms of data, going out there and standing there and looking at it ourselves, which we've done, doing it again. We've got people out there this week, interviewing residents that know what's going on around here, and long-term residents with some experience that can tell us, this is what it was like in a certain year, this is what it's like now, what happened between then and now? Can we correlate certain conditions with hurricane swells, or big swells, or other types of conditions that might have affected it? Citizen science is welcome. We want stakeholder input, we want citizen science. Bring it forward. We're an open book. I'll give it to him. He's the assistant project manager, Justin. We'll be looking at things like I've already indicated, the condition of the beach, what's behind the beach that's vulnerable to being attacked by waves and water during extreme conditions, and what can you do to try to fend off the ocean in that location, and opportunities and constraints. What are things like a welcome mat for us to do a project at a specific site within the city versus a constraint that might say, don't go here, maybe go over there because there's sensitive habitat or some other thing that we don't want to touch. You can go to the next slide. The city's a bit variable depending on the geography and what you're looking at. North of Linda Lane, there's very little beach. You start getting into Mariposa Point, or you start getting into North Beach, Capistrano Shores, etc., and there's virtually no beach until you get up towards Shore Cliffs in Poaching, where there's a little bit of beach. And there's some sensitive habitat up there. South of Linda Lane, we've got sand near the pier, as you know. We've got sand. T Street is an interesting formation. T Street appears to hold a beach to the north of it right now. If you stand on the pier and you look to the south, T Street sticks out and so does the coastline, which causes us to scratch our heads and say, what if there were more T Street-like things around the city? Maybe we could mimic that kind of formation to hold pockets of sand in certain areas. And I'll tell you more that'll make you clap more later. And yet, when you get to the far south end of the city, past the state beach, it is gone. And that's where obviously the train picture was, and it's like the people at Cypress Shores we know are having a dickens of a time. And so, is there something that can be done to help everybody? We've gotten ideas from them already, or at least people that represent certain groups that I think maybe have that interest in mind. So I've already said what's on the rest of the slide, so you can advance it, Miley, thank you very much. When we come up with nature-based concepts, what we try to do is just start on the laundry list and present it, float a long list to the city and to the stakeholders to help weed stuff out. We will be looking at nearshore reefs. We'll be looking at offshore reefs. We'll be looking at beach nourishment. We'll be looking at beach nourishment and sand retention. Okay, that to me is really important. We'll be looking at living shorelines behind the beach. In order to have a living shoreline behind the beach, and I'll show you one of those in a minute, you got to have a beach in front of it to have the living shoreline behind it. If you don't have a beach in front of it, that living shoreline's temporary, all right? If you want it to last for a while, you got to have some beach in front of it. So all these things suggest, let's build beach. Let's keep the beach in place. Let's increase the size of the beach. We might be trying to mimic things like T Street. We might be trying to mimic things like trestles. So on that note, advance the slide. So trestles is an example of a very successful natural feature that it's a relic delta of San Mateo Creek. It's got a cobble and boulder base to it, just offshore, in the near shore. And it causes waves to focus at several different places, and the waves wrap around and attack the cobble pile, basically the deltas that were laid out by the river. And what that does is it focuses wave energy on certain pretty well-armored areas, and it disperses wave energy and causes quieter zones off to the side, adjacent to the shoulders of the feature, and that's where sand starts to collect. So you get a sandy beach on the shoulders of these points, or these reefs, and then you get sand behind it, that the beach just kind of builds up, it rises in elevation, and sand collects behind it, and there's enough sand that's collected here that there's a really nice dune network, a living shoreline behind trestles. So it's a large-scale feature, but it could be mimicked at a smaller scale as a pilot project, potentially. So it's just one of these things we're looking at as, wow, there's a gold mine of information at trestles, and it's right down there. It's just to the south. Maybe that same kind of formation could be mimicked at a different scale, a smaller scale, somewhere else throughout the city. So there's just a bunch of photographs of individual photographs of the condition, and it hosts, endangered birds and stuff like that. Go ahead, Miley. The agencies would love to see, an endangered bird attraction. The group that we bring to this is a mix of scientists and ecologists and engineers, and our ecologists are a small group from up north in Santa Barbara, and actually they're in town right now. And they've cut their teeth on some dunes just north of UC Santa Barbara, where there is a wide beach, and it is held in place by a down coast natural feature, a reef. And that beach is built out to be wide enough that the sand blew off the beach and formed these dunes behind the beach. That's what it does. The beach feeds dunes. The dunes form, the dunes grow. The dunes get colonized with native vegetation and they grow more. So these dunes can become a storage of sand. They can also become a barrier to waves overtopping them and doing something bad behind them. So the native habitat that forms is a very popular thing with the agencies. It's very attractive to sensitive habitat, and it draws funding. So if we can attract funding by creating a condition that would bring native vegetation and sensitive species in, we'd like to do that. So we have that kind of input to the team. Go to the next slide, please. There's been a couple of projects that have been put in place to mimic that kind of thing. An example is down in Encinitas, at Cardiff State Beach. The city, in working with funding from the state, installed the Cardiff Living Shoreline in 2019. And the Cardiff Living Shoreline it's along Highway 101, Restaurant Row area, just south of Restaurant Row in Encinitas. And you can see it in the aerial photograph kind of in the center. And what was done was there was a rock revetment along that stretch of highway. And in the wintertime, waves would run up that rock revetment, and they would get on the highway, they would carry cobbles, and they would litter the highway with cobbles, and they would damage the highway. And the city would have to go clean it off and do their repairs, and it was just a pain in the backside for years and years and years. So finally, the idea was, well, let's put up a barrier that becomes a natural barrier, basically this living shoreline. And the way to do it is, the beach was nourished a year before that in 2018 with 300,000 cubic yards of sand. Well, that's pretty close to what the Corps of Engineers is gonna put on your town, on your beaches. That 300,000 cubic yards came from the lagoon that's off to the left in the photograph. That sand and existing beach sand was used to cover the rock slope revetment, put some cobble at the toe to act as kind of a first line of defense. If waves remove the sand, they start to work on cobble, they've got to remove the cobble to get any further in and cause more damage to the site. So on top of the sand was planted native dune vegetation, seeds and plantings, and the plantings took. And the plantings did a good job of establishing a cover over the dunes, and it caused the dunes to start to grow naturally. So the dunes have been kind of elevating themselves over time since it was constructed. It was not built to be a permanent feature that would be a permanent barrier. It was a feature that was a pilot project to see how long would it last. How would it perform under an extreme storm? Well, it got its test this January with an extreme storm that took out about a third of the dunes, the front face. It didn't take it halfway out, it took out a little less than that. And so they need to be repaired, and that was always anticipated from sand that would come from the lagoon again, because the lagoon needs to be dredged of some sand that's deposited in there. So there's some monitoring taking place, and there needs to be some repair work done. It's not a complete replacement, but the dunes succeeded in preventing water from overtopping, getting on the highway and dropping a bunch of cobble on the highway to damage things. So they did weather a significant event. You can advance the slide, please. So those are options. That's another option for a back beach type of treatment. It could exist at a place with a linear type of orientation where there's still room at the back of the beach for this kind of thing to exist and still provide for beach use, recreational in front of it. In order to do anything, you probably know that permits are required, so that whenever you start getting into the coastal zone, you've got permits from the Coastal Commission typically, the Water Board, the Army Corps of Engineers, the State Lands Commission, and potentially even others. There will need to be a NEPA document, a CEQA document. Others probably do the NEPA document like the Corps of Engineers, but the city would probably have to, have somebody prepare a California Environmental Quality Act document, a CEQA document. And it would be designed in such a way that it wouldn't require compensatory mitigation. It would be a self-mitigating feature, meaning that it would create habitat, that would compensate for any cover that might have occurred on a footprint on the beach. You can advance the slide. We'll also be looking at funding for your project, how to get money. And how to get money is to show to funding agencies that you have a benefit to cost ratio that's greater than 1. So your benefits out are greater than your costs, your financial, economic benefits. So we brought in a guy named Phil King from Cal State San Francisco, and Phil King is an expert on quantifying benefits and costs for projects that are applying for state funding. So we'll go through the process of quantifying what would be the benefits, and the benefits are increased recreational use of your beach, drawing people from out of town, having overnight visitors, sponsoring special events, whether it's surfing contests or volleyball tournaments or whatever, the Ocean Festival, things like that, and not having damages, preventing damages from flooding and erosion. Okay, so preventing damage is another part of that. And then the cost of the project will be weighed against that. So, we're going to be striving to design something that has a high benefit, lower cost, so the state of California would say, hey, if we put $1 toward this, we get $2 back, that kind of thing. And then you can advance. Funding opportunities exist. There's some at the local level that you might need to use as a match, and I know you're already doing that with the Corps of Engineers, but we'd be looking at the state of California, because the state of California has said, up until just very recently, we've got a lot of money that we're trying to put toward projects right now. This is a good time to apply. So the swifter we get through this process and identify some project and its cost, the sooner you can apply and try to take advantage of that. So we're trying to strike while the iron's hot. There's federal funding out there too that we can also suggest that the city target for its funding applications. And then, go to the next slide. I think we're almost done. So, finally, this would all be wrapped up in one succinct and comprehensive document that the city would be able to review and give us input on. The public could review it, and so would the Coastal Commission. So it's going to go through several iterations of review and comments and revisions. That's going to be on us, obviously, to do a lot of work on that. And then go to the next slide. I think this is it. Now I'm open for questions if you have some, but I expect you might.
Good, yes. Are there any commissioner questions?
for the panel?
Use your mic.
Yes. Hi, Chris. Good to
Ms.
see
Camp and
you.
Beyond, nice to see you.
Yeah, so first, thank you for the presentation, and I just want to start off by saying I'm really, really excited about this project and this grant that we got, and I really think I love a lot of what I heard today. I really think that it's an important step for our city to take, and I really do think that it's so important that we've come up with the nature-based concepts as part of this, because I do think that is going to be critically important as we move through the regulatory process and the permitting. So I really am happy to see about the basis of the project. So I just had a couple of questions based on what I saw. So the first is that it sounds like you said that the end of the project, that it's going to be one pilot project that would be proposed,
One or more.
one or more.
Yeah, we're not sure how many. We would offer up as many as we have budget and time to do within the budget.
Yeah, because I think the only thing concern I would have with that is that we have so many beach areas and reaches that are in need of
Yeah.
probably these types of projects. So it would be nice that maybe there could be a design concept for each of those reaches.
Okay.
And that maybe there could be one that's chosen to focus on at this time, but at least then it would provide the opportunity to look at solutions for different
Yeah,
beach segments.
okay.
So that's one idea. And then the other is that, what do you think about, because I know these things are expensive to do. I mean, it's one thing to come up with a concept and it's another to get it
Yeah.
funded. And like about doing another federal project, and will this process that you're doing be able to go into like maybe another Army Corps project in the future?
Well, you know what, I had never thought of that. That's an idea, that's a great, good one. Why not, right? You were successful the first time. There's other core programs, ecosystem restoration programs, too. Maybe it could fit into something other than the shoreline protection program, but you never know. So we're completely open to that, and we can include that toward the pathway for funding.
Okay, great. And then the other thing was last week, the city council, they were looking at a rainbow dredging concept, and that was rejected. And then they talked about forming some sort of dredging consortium with City of Oceanside and potentially other partners, which is something that I have a lot of interest in moving forward with. And so do you see that being something that we can kind of do simultaneously, which is find sand, start bringing that sand in while we're coming up with sand retention
Yes,
strategies?
absolutely. A parallel track, parallel path, that's a great idea. We definitely encourage that. And consorting and reaching out to other agencies that have a similar interest, have some experience that can benefit you, can only help. Another agency to consider is San Diego Association of Governments. They implemented 2 projects already that were large-scale regional projects, of which Oceanside was a participant in each one of them. And so they have a keen interest in generating a broader range of influence and a larger set of stakeholders and partners. They just expressed that to us a week ago. So we can give you contact information if you'd like that.
Okay, that'd be great. The other thing goes towards what we were talking about, which is sort of marrying these ideas between beach retention and sort of these marine ecosystem, restoration ideas, which I think is fantastic. So one idea that just from my research, I was looking at like 90% of our kelp forests are gone in Orange County. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to like identify the specific marine ecosystem needs and see if we could sort of marry that with some of the retention concepts. So maybe kelp forest with a living breakwater, or I know a lot of our shellfish have disappeared as well. So, and in addition to the, I think the sandy beaches and the importance for our shoreline birds. The other thing that I had was also about, previously, I think it was in 2016, the city used to get material from the Santa Ana River Mill, and we would replenish North Beach. I think maybe Linda Lane, but I think mostly North Beach.
No, it's only North Beach.
North Beach with that,
Twice.
okay.
Yeah.
And so that would be another thing that is we pursued that
Yeah.
sort of as a parallel track, if that would sort of be consistent.
And there's excess sand at the Santa Ana River. In fact, they're planning to haul some of that sand to Crystal Cove State Beach as soon as humanly possible. So Orange County is looking at nourishing and offering it up, and I don't think it costs it. I don't think they're charging.
Yeah, I think it's free, we just paid for trucking costs is my
Right.
understanding, but we let the permit, we used to have an RGP 66 with the Corps, and that's currently expired, so we need to get that back up and running. And then my other question was, I saw that beach nourishment was on your list of nature-based solutions, and part of that, at least it seems to me, is that we need to identify an offshore borrow site.
Yep.
Is that gonna be part of the study where you're gonna be looking, or is that maybe something that's gonna be additional?
It's premature to be able to have it and have a search for that in this study. What this study would say is exactly what you just said. There needs to be a good sand source identified that's relatively close. And by the way, the county is initiating that kind of work right now, or OC Parks. But we could look at prior investigations like we've done for Sandag, and they're aged data, but they're still high quality data, meaning they give you blobs planting areas out in the ocean where there's an indication that the probability of finding sand is higher than in other areas. So we could start to look out there, because having something somewhere between Dana Point and Camp Pendleton would be better than having to go down to Oceanside to get it, which I know is the Corps' plan from what I understand. So that's just distance that factors into cost and time, and it kind of reduces the amount of sand you get for your money. So the closer, the better. North Orange County has a sand source that's pretty close, and the Corps found it, so the Corps knows how to do it. And it's about a half-mile offshore Surfside Colony, and they just keep mining it. Seems like it's the endless sand hill underwater. So if that could be found somewhere in proximity to here, it would make things a lot more effective.
Okay, and then the other idea that we had come up with was potentially looking at upland sources, just because of what's happening in the south end of town. Okta is bringing in a lot of rock and throwing it all over our beaches, and I'm wondering if we could maybe bring in sand, and if that's something that we could look
By rail.
at as well.
By rail,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's a
We
great
could side dump on the
Yeah.
back beach.
tip car, yeah. That's, we helped establish your opportunistic beach field program back in 2005. And that was one of the options, was bringing in by rail, using tip car, because, obviously the economics of rail is you can bring it farther and you can bring large quantities. It's just a matter of, there are some complications with use of the rail line to do it. When can the hours be provided, et cetera. So, but we had a rail expert that really helped us through that, and we were able to identify a scenario where it could be done. So it is possible, and why not, right? It's like a perfect situation to do it. So if they can dump rock off, dumping sand, it'd be better.
Yeah, and my last comment is as a potential funding source. So San Clemente used to have a clean ocean fee, and that covered our clean ocean program, which was largely focused on stormwater. But it is in talk for renewal, and I'm wondering if that could be expanded to include money for coastal resiliency projects.
We'll certainly look into that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any additional questions from commissioners? Go ahead.
Yeah, probably an unfair question, but I'm just kind of interested in expectations of time frame. If we knew today what we wanted to do for a pilot project and we needed to get through funding and permitting and get to a point where we started work, what would you say to us to expect that time frame to be?
5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Depending on the measure, if it can be done in, if it's a smaller action that doesn't take as much as extensive level of environmental review permitting, might be 3 years. But there's permitting and engineering and funding, it's all time consuming. So you could say 3 on the short end, 5 on the long end.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, Chris. Nice to see
Hello,
you
Ms.
again.
Ambrose.
Chris, I was wondering about the opportunistic sand availability.
Mhm.
And I know you identified some borrower sites right now.
Yeah.
And I think the reason we dropped them is because the permits were so expensive to maintain when we didn't need sand all the time. And you were correct, the only two times we used the opportunistic sand was at North Beach.
Right.
And unfortunately, weather came much sooner than we thought,
Right.
so the storms really washed that away much more quickly.
Right.
However, with the last time, state parks were a great beneficiary of much of that sand, and they were very happy about that. They'd be happy if it happened now.
Right.
But what is the cost right now? Are they inflated like the economy is in terms of permitting for this kind of opportunistic sand? And are there lists of places? Are there dates? Are there timeframes, et cetera? Can you explain that to our audience and to us, please?
Sure, I'll do my best with that, Ms. Ambrose. So the cost to secure the permits really isn't inflated too much. I mean, there might be a little bit of an escalated cost in the permit application fees, but that's all. It's really, the increased cost would come when the truck hauling would occur, because the fuel's more expensive, basically. So I don't think the cost of using construction equipment is terribly, that's conventional construction equipment, earth moving equipment. It's not specialty stuff, excavators and small trucks or bulldozers and things like that. So there is an added cost to actually build it. I can't tell you how much more expensive it would be right now, but I could try to figure that out. But the processing of the permitting, things like that, isn't any different. It's a little more rigorous. The agencies have tightened up. They just continue to do that. And one of the things that caused it to be cost ineffective was that it required monitoring, and some of the monitoring started to add up. It's biological monitoring, surfing monitoring, and some other things. And I think it became kind of more of a headache than anything else. And when you factor in the cost to haul material 20 miles one way, and it was a small amount. It was a pilot effort to see if you could do it, really. Can you get trucks to back in to North Beach from the mobile home park area? And it worked. So it was demonstrated to be successful from that regard. But the sand was placed on one of the projects, the last one was placed in December. So we knew it was going to go down on the beach in December and it was going to be gone in January because it's December. The tides alone will start to mobilize it because the tides are swinging so hard in December. So I don't know how well I answered it. I just know that we'll run into similar stuff. The one thing we can say though is there's been a few projects that have been done with no impact, so maybe the monitoring we can push back a smidge and say, well, you know, there was no impact to surfing. You know, let's not do surfing monitoring. We don't have to. Let's, you know, we have to do some beach profile transects. Let's keep them under control and not do so many that it's overkill with regards to data. So we have enough experience that I think we can help negotiate the permit conditions, or at least give you the ammo to do it yourself and try to keep the costs manageable. It's another tool in the toolbox.
Yes, thank you. I have one more question, please. I just attended an Ocean Protection Council meeting, and in one of the discussions, they talked about lots of grant money available for various projects with shoreline development and sand loss and erosion.
That's good news.
And certain committees that are being put together to really study these in terms of equity and all of these things that have to do with flooding and weather and the erosion components. And one of the things that I found interesting is that the Ocean Protection Council has monies of their own and access to a lot of grant money. So please put that in your notes, that those might be sources of some of the smaller pilot projects that we would like to do. And they really emphasize, they like those projects that kind of you can hang a hanger on a project next door.
Sure.
And it would be a kind of continuum.
Right.
And plus you would be including the lessons learned from what was done next door, so to speak, next beach over or whatever. And that's where that's where Crystal Cove got their money.
Okay, that's interesting.
I just thought I'd pass that on to you.
The Ocean Protection Council was on our slide for a list of funding, so we're aware of that, but you're telling me some stuff I don't know, and that right now, they're advertising for, hey, we want to fund some projects, and I know they like to do out-of-the-box new things that are test cases that, like you said, you can take the data and results from that and apply it to maybe another project down the coast, you know, a second effort to keep trying to improve on the actions that can promote a healthy shoreline, and everything goes along with that. So,
Well, I say that because, you know, you mentioned Skag, and I think that those connections there, whether we're going south,
Yeah.
or some partnerships, depending on how the state parks is wanting to do that as well, or Oceanside as well. I wish that Oceanside was already part of the Skag efforts, but also to the north, those could be things, especially the involvement of state parks is particularly important because of the state presence they have,
right.
and they have, go ahead.
And, well, they have a funding source, a beach erosion program.
Yes,
and
that's right,
that's where the bigger pot of money is.
yes.
In the past, at least it has been.
So if we can entertain state parks
Yeah.
in various locations,
Yeah,
that would be a big bonus for our city.
I think you're right,
And since we have two parks
right,
right here, you know, Second Place State Park and San Onofre,
right.
and then Dana Point being so close, that would be something I think that would interest a lot of people who would be willing to fund
Yeah.
if co-joined properly.
Yeah, okay, I
I
hear
just thought I'd share that information. One last question. Do you have a list of cities or municipalities or regions that have introduced dredging in order to get sand to the beaches to prevent erosion?
Cities?
Cities or regions, areas that have done that, and what's been the success rate?
Well, I referred to San Diego Association of Governments where Sandag did it, right? And they included their membership, which is all the coastal cities and the county. 12 different placement locations was the first project, and 8 different ones in the second project. They pared down a smidge. So that's the primary one, okay? City of Seal Beach, they have done so much, and they're the smallest city I think we've worked with. And they've been so active with nourishing their beach, taking sand from the Santa Ana River multiple times, getting the Corps to do dredging offshore and pump it onto their beach one time. And so they have, City of Seal Beach is a great example. They've done it probably close to a dozen times since the 90s. And they just put small plunks if they can, and then a bigger plunk if they get. They're a half-mile long. Their city's a mile long. Their problem beach is a half-mile long. So they just work to bombard that with sand. And it's helping. I'll try to think of some other ones, but off the top of my head, I'm kind of coming up short. So if I can think of more,
Since we don't usually talk about that, it's not been brought up before that I'm aware of, at least to my consciousness.
yeah.
I think it's very interesting, the idea is interesting, especially if there is a consortium created, just like Skag did. It would be very, very successful, I would think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I really appreciate this presentation tonight. I'm
Thank you
sure our
for-
community does as well.
We appreciate your comments.
Any other questions? All right, once again, thank you for your presentation. It's definitely exciting to see some things coming together that are highly needed. With that, we do have a request for an item 1, 3-minute speaker. So I'd like to invite,
I'm sorry, can I, while we have Cecilia here, can I just ask a real quick question about the Army Corps project? I just want to kind of check on status real quick. I mean, last presentation we had, we were talking about starting that project in September, October timeframe, maybe 6 to 8 weeks with San Antonio from Oceanside. Is all that still kind of on track? Is that your understanding right now?
My understanding is it's still on track and on schedule. We're hoping to get an update from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that we can provide to the council, and we will certainly pass that information on to the commission.
Thank you.
okay. So returning to this, we have a request for public speaker for agenda item number 1, Susie Whitlow.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Susie Whitelaw, the co-founder of Save Our Beaches San Clemente. I'm a geologist by training. My doctoral research was in marine sediment dynamics, and I've been involved with environmental restoration for many years. Save Our Beaches began about a year ago with a small group of people from the south end of San Clemente watching our beach get eroded and then filled in with huge boulders by OCTA. We watched as the railroad continued to armor the beach with boulders, and it's been advancing northward ever since, all the way up to the state park. So we decided to expand our focus to cover all of San Clemente's public beaches, and we have grown with other concerned citizens, scientists, and surfers. They're the most important ones. Our mission is to advocate for practical, cost-effective, nature-based solutions to our coastal erosion issues. I really love the presentations, and Chris, thank you so much for all of your work. We can identify one of the most critical areas of erosion is the state park, especially south of Calafia. The armoring has gone up right up to the boundary of that park. It's eroding, and the next big winter storm is going to start undermining the tracks, and they're gonna start dumping out that huge pile of boulders. There's beautiful dunes there that look just like the living, the dunes that Chris was talking about, and we don't want those to be destroyed. So that's an area where we would like to focus. If you go out to Calafia State Beach right now, it's not wider. It may have been the last time when the shoreline profiling was done. It's 0 to 15 feet, up to 0 feet of berm that's left on the Calafia beach. All that went down to the South Beach, and it did improve conditions down to the south end of the beach, but it breaks my heart about where that sand came from. We're super excited to see this project roll out. The faster the better. We need a beach restoration plan with solid scientific underpinnings so we know what to aim for and what to avoid. With the technical skills of Moffitt and Nickel, under the extremely capable guidance of Cecilia, we are confident of achieving an excellent product. Tomorrow? Thank you.
All right, we've received another request for agenda item 1. Denise Erkina?
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
You did.
Thank you very much. Denise Serkinap with Surfrider Foundation, South Orange County chapter. We agree wholeheartedly with Susie's comments on up and down the coast and some of the nature-based solutions that can be hopefully replicated in San Clemente and included in this beach study program and rollout. One of the things that I want to take your panel back to is Ventura. We made a presentation about the Ventura coastline to the Coastal Commission last week, and Ventura is also a great success story that our Surfrider Foundation chapter up there was hands-on and helped to implement over 30 years ago. There's one part of it that's still left remaining to fund, which is the last section of the parking lot. But all in all, Ventura was a shining example of during the storms that we saw last month. It held up pretty fairly. And so that is a great example of a living shoreline, nature-based solution for the beach. And now we have Capistrano Beach that our chapter has been working on that campaign for over 10 years to have the Coastal Commission finally last November approve a nature-based solution with Capistrano Beach. And the last portion of that is of course getting it funded, but it's well on its way. And I'm glad to see that Moffitt and Associates, had it in their program to coalesce with OC Parks on that, because they're well into the planning process under the tutelage of the Coastal Commission. Overall, Surfrider, asks that please be cognizant of no hard armoring, which are no groins, no jetties, and mostly, we shy away from supporting artificial reefs. And applying nature-based solutions, dune restoration, wherever and anywhere applicable. And it occurred to me to look back into the ocean fee also after a set of meetings the last few days to reinstate the ocean fee. I believe it may have a voter arm to it to reinstate it, and if not, to be creative and perhaps include language that would go further beyond the Ocean Clean Act fee to include beach restoration. And if you do that, one of our suggestions, strong suggestion, is hire a beach restoration manager at the city of San Clemente. You know, once this project, you know, is complete, then you have somebody at the city to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. All right, and one more agenda item for item number 1, Steve Lang.
Thank you, Pam. My name's Steve Lang. As you said, I'm just a citizen. I live in the very southwest corner of San Clemente. And I'm a surfer and look at the beach most every day. And I've been watching our sand erode for at least a decade. 2014, we had Hurricane Marie come, and she started a big loss of our sand. Well, my questions today is kind of for Chris. The city itself has been piling up sand at T Street, from the pier to T Street, in those berms. We saw it in a couple of the pictures, and that prevents the natural lateral migration of the sand going back and forth. And so I want to know, environmentally, what does that do for us? And my second question would be, again, for Chris, is I keep hearing from a lot of surfers and fishermen and divers that there's a lot of sand built up along the Edison Reef. What's the name of the Edison Reef?
Wheeler Reef?
Yeah, and so that's like a big rumor control, you know, is there sand out there or not? And Jareen, you had great questions, everyone, I appreciate it. And Susie, to get it going, we've been talking about this for a long time. And we're grateful you're here, we're grateful that this is happening, and I feel very hopeful tonight. And it's just been, we've been watching this, like, remember the commercial of the old Indian when he was looking out over the debris of the trash all over America, and he had a tear going in his eye, what happened to America? Remember the old commercial, you're not old enough? Anyway, I feel like that about our beach, and so I'm just grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you're trying to expedite this, and thank you very much. And if Chris can answer my questions.
Thank you, Steve. I apologize for being late wrong. All right. So,
Would you like a response to those questions, or?
do that.
Now is that a card? Have him do a card?
When he's responding to an audience member, I think we should allow him to answer the questions. He's part of the consulting team.
Yeah, you can go ahead and share that response.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, I heard everybody, I appreciate the input. Mr. Lang,
Sorry, you have to address the commission though.
Commissioners, Chair, Co-Chair, I'm Chris Webb with Moffett Nickel, and so in response to some of Mr. Lang's questions, I'll do my best with it just off the top of my head, but I may have to follow up with some more information. But Steve, I think you're referring to the winter dike, seasonal dike that's erected along the beach, and so, you know, the purposes of that is to try to block wave runup. It does two things. It blocks wave runup from directly reaching infrastructure, and they're effective at doing that. And it moves sand that's on the beach farther back up to a higher elevation, so it's not quite so easy for the ocean to reach and take out. So it keeps more sand up on the beach, and it, you know, does a good job of being a barrier. They can do a great job of saving infrastructure. So in terms of what does that do, in my opinion, it's the quantity of sand to build that dike is not large enough to cause a noticeable change anywhere else really on the beach. It's basically sand that's at that location that gets pushed back, so the beach profile changes shape now and it becomes a steeper and higher back beach, and, you know, kind of a narrower and lower front beach, I guess, closer to the water at that location. I don't think it keeps that sand from going down and nourishing the down coast beach necessarily. It might slow some of that, but again, even if it did, the quantity of that sand that would move down coast to potentially help the down coast beach isn't sufficient to protect it necessarily. So I think the practice is a good practice that tends to be effective. And if there was more sand at this beach, you wouldn't need it, you know. So that's the question for the answer to that. And off the top of my head now, with regards to Wheeler Reef from Edison, Wheeler Reef was installed in water that's deep enough to be outside of what we call the littoral zone. The littoral zone is a band of area in the ocean that sand moves throughout to go up on the beach in the summer, back out in the sandbar in the winter, and it moves laterally and it moves perpendicular to shore. Minus 30 feet of water is approximately the seaward end of that littoral cell, meaning if sand stays shallower than minus 30 feet, it can come back on shore in the summer and go back out in the winter to shallower water than 30 feet, back on shore in the summer. If it gets beyond 30 feet deep, it's gone. So it's outside of the littoral cell and it's in deep water, it's offshore. Wheeler Reef was built in water that was 33 feet and deeper. So Wheeler Reef was intentionally built outside of the littoral cell. I'm sure there's plenty of sand built up around Wheeler Reef, I don't think that's a problem, but that's not sand that would have been on the beach, and if it was lost on the beach, it's not sand that would have ever returned. What Wheeler Reef might do, and this is just conjecture, so it's probably something I shouldn't say, but I'll do it anyway, since I started this, it might anchor the position of the toe or the outer edge of that littoral zone, which might provide a benefit in some way. I'm not sure what yet, but if it anchors the toe, it means that sand's not so easily lost offshore if it causes a buildup of sand in the vicinity of those rocks. So it's fairly benign, in my opinion, to the condition of the beach. I don't think there's a connection, to be honest with you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, at this time, we'll move to agenda item number 2, approval of the minutes. And Sam, I have a question regarding point of order. We have a speaker request form for this section. When should I introduce, I don't invite that person. You can do it now. No? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so agenda item number 2, speaker has declined to name. Please see the residence and name.
Good evening. Before I start, I just want to thank Susan, Jermaine, and Amelia for your concern and taking your extra time and effort on the coastal issues. The city is in great hands. So I am here tonight to discuss the minutes staff is recommending you approve under 7 communications. It makes no mention of the 13 plus minutes of discussion amongst staff, commissioners, and the public speaker. It does mention a motion was made and a vote taken on an item that was not agendized, the site-specific master plan, park master plan. In the slides I sent to each of you, I want to refer you to the rules governing meeting slide, which states, no discussion or action except on agenda. Can there be a better example of a Brown Act violation? A non-agendized item was discussed for over 13 minutes, and then a motion and a vote was taken. The city does not need more lawsuits generated due to Brown Act violations. To that end, it would be wise to request Ms. Rousseau produce in a written form the legal advice she solicited and received that states the action taken in your December meeting was not a Brown Act violation. I think we need to cover it. I also learned during the Brown Act training that the only time a call to order is appropriate is at the start of the meeting, and there's one noted in 7A. Hopefully, bringing this information to your attention is received as intended, a helpful tool, and not taken personally. If anyone has not completed the Brown Act training, I urge you to do so. Your actions can have significant implications to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, are there any motions to approve the minutes for December 13th, 2022?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of December 15th.
I'll second.
Okay, so approval has been made for the minutes as they have been submitted.
And I have to abstain. You have to say all in favor.
Oh, so yeah, let's move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed?
I wasn't here.
And abstainers.
Thank you.
So please note the approval of the minutes has gone through with one abstention from Joan. All right, so moving into item number 3, oral communications. I have one request from San Clemente resident decline full name.
Thank you. Anyone wonder why I keep speaking at city meetings? I am not an activist seeking political or social change. I'm a tax-paying resident seeking help to restore the quality of life for residents on Via San Gorgonio. That's it. When Sanji was built, the city took specific measures to ensure the quality of life for residents on Via San Gorgonio would not be negatively affected by noise, and no more than 2 to 3 times per year would it create overflow parking. That was our assurances. This is no longer the case. Our VPNR director has not been honest with you. She has falsified documents, she has withheld pertinent information, and flat out lied. Commissioners would have had vital information that would have significantly impacted decisions. Does this concern you? It is very concerning to me. She owes everyone an explanation. My questions to the commissioners who voted to install 8 pickleball courts in Sanji in 2019, and to the commissioners who voted on the 5-park master plan in December 2021. Why were you not informed that all noise-producing activities are to be placed on the freeway side of the park, so that our quality of life would not be negatively impacted by noise? Results, we have 8 pickleball courts located as close to residents as is humanly possible. Pickleball courts create the loudest and most annoying noise of any game, one that residents are subjected to from sunup to sunset 7 days a week. Secondly, why were you not informed that the city notified all residents on Via San Gorgonio that city usage of the park would cause overflow parking onto Via San Gorgonio at most 2 or 3 times a year? Results, now we have overflow onto Via San Gorgonio on a regular basis. It is documented with videos, photos, and by a public safety commissioner. Every resident on Via San Gorgonio, except one, has either signed a petition, sent letters, sent emails, sent texts, made phone calls, or gave oral presentations to staff, commissioners, or council that the pickleball noise and unsafe traffic is having a negative impact on the enjoyment of our homes. You have the authority to rectify this. Please, agendize a second look at the 5-park master plan. This time requires staff provide you with all pertinent information of the protections and assurances given to the residents on Via San Gorgonio. I doubt you will find the plan staff presented to you meets those requirements of noise or adequate parking. It deserves a second look. Secondly, the VPNR Commission voted to remove the court in San Luis Rey Park due to residents' complaint. Knowing now that these courts should have never been put on the residential side of Sanji, I request you agendize their removal immediately, not 2 to 3 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding some of the comments that were just made.
Susan, can you move your microphone a little closer?
Yes, I apologize. I have a question about some of the comments that were just made or shared with us. I'm wondering, Director Wiley, is there a history of activity regarding the park, San Gorgonio Park? And because none of us have been here long enough to go through the history prior to our arriving, and even the team before us, and maybe even the team before them. Can you do a search, or can we do a search on what decisions have been made over the years, over perhaps the past 20 years? I think that park was built in like 1978. Can we do a study, or at least gather the research and show us so that we can make informed decisions when we're talking about modernizing or fixing the wrongs at San Gorgonio right now? I don't feel that we have enough adequate information that applies to us making a decision on some of the things that have been done to San Gorgonio that should not have happened. Can you help me out with some suggestions, some ideas, please? So that's what I'm recommending, that we have some kind of history.
Yeah, when an item comes up for San Gorgonio Park, I'm happy to bring that information then. At this point, it's not on our agenda this evening, and we're not addressing San Gorgonio Park at all. I'm happy to provide you, Mr. Ambrose, with background on San Bernardino Park, if that's what you're looking for. I suggest we have a conversation offline, if that's the case.
Okay, I will do that. And then perhaps later, when we talk about future agenda items, I may suggest that we further agenda, I put that on the agenda for another meeting. Thank you for your follow-up and input.
So moving into agenda item number 4, current community activities and updates from Samantha. Part A being recreation activities and events.
Yeah, the only update I have is about a fishing derby that's coming up at the end of February to celebrate San Clemente Day. This is an annual event where we celebrate our anniversary. This is our 95th anniversary of incorporation for the city of San Clemente. That will be held on the last Saturday of February. It's a free fishing derby for kids. And we also offer free swim at the Ole Hansen Beach Club, or the Aquatic Center this year, for all of our San Clemente residents. So we're encouraging our folks to sign up. If you don't have fishing poles, that's okay. We can provide those, and we've got some really incredible lady anglers from Dana Wharf that are going to be out providing techniques and tips for all of our youth. And then the other update I wanted to provide is related to recreation. We now have our magazine out for the spring, so hopefully you all got that in your homes, and that will give a full update on what to expect this spring as well as our classes and programs.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the session personnel? Okay, we'll move into 4B, environmental services update.
There is no update for environmental tonight.
Okay, so moving forward to item number 5 on our agenda, old business, section A, Elite Soccer League Sports Partnership Review. And back to you, Sam.
So this evening is a returning item to the commission based on our conversations from the December meeting. I do believe the contents of the staff report really summarizes where we were and where we're at today. For a quick refresher, this commission was looking to shore up the potentially missing rosters that were identified prior to staff's ability to incorporate that into our numbers. Staff have worked with Elite Soccer, and we've continued to identify additional missing rosters. And so our numbers are actually updated on our total residency percentages, and it's actually lower, it's closer to 85%. So at this time, staff are continuing with the recommendation for gold partnership status for 1 year, and then they might be able to reapply after that 1 year. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Just have a question. So just to clarify then, you guys did do a study of the rosters and found their number was less than what the application had said and from what has been said so far?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner. There's in soccer world, most sports worlds, there's what they call gaming circuits, and that's where schedules are posted online. All organizations participate within a specific gaming circuit. So it's public information, and staff monitor those regularly for all of our partners, just to ensure that there's transparency and honesty going on at both ends. And it was noted that there were a couple of home games played at San Clemente, and those rosters were missing from the original application. The last time I spoke with staff, which was last week, I think it was up to 6 that were omitted in their original application. And so based on that, and I understand that Elite has expressed that those teams are no longer San Clemente teams, that they're moving them out of the San Clemente group. But unfortunately, they played in San Clemente as their primary season. They are part of the CFA San Clemente group. And so staff count that as a San Clemente team. And therefore, many of those teams have a lot of non-residents, so it is impacting their residency rate, if you will.
Any additional questions?
I have a question. We had some discussion last meeting about girls softball. We relaxed the rules for them because there were some delays in getting the feedback about the actual numbers and the percentage of San Clemente residents. And I was wondering if Elite has requested that we do the same for them and perhaps provide them the elevated status. Jennifer, they had two different issues when they came last time. So they had two different issues. The softball truly had one team from Dana Point that affected the numbers. What's affecting Elite is several rosters are missing, but they played home games on our fields. So they were two different separate issues. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we do have one request to address BPRC in agenda item 5A. Please, full name is declined, city residents. Ms. Engelmann.
Ready for the video? I have a video for you.
Excuse me, sorry. Sorry, I had this queued up.
This is what Via San Gregorio experiences when staff allows simultaneous activities in San Gregorio Park. As I've already discussed during my prior comment, the city policy is that overflow onto Via San Gregorio is to occur not more than 2 to 3 times a year. These unsafe conditions are an ongoing occurrence. Notice the family and kids and everybody having to walk in the street. It seems to occur most often when Elite Soccer has use of the park. Slide, please. Our interim city manager acknowledged during a recent council meeting, the city must do a better job in enforcing the unambiguous wording in our athletic partnership agreements. This slide is from the Elite Soccer agreement. Elite must coordinate game schedule to reduce overlap of game times and allow adequate time between games for players leaving the games to vacate parking spaces for those coming in to avoid these type of conditions. If you decide to renew a partnership agreement with Elite Soccer, or for that matter, any organization that will allow field use at San Gregorio Park, they need to be made aware of this requirement and we need to have it enforced. Also, staff is contributing to the problem in Sanji when it allows sports organizations to use multiple fields simultaneously. What happens here is that they allow the multi-field and the baseball field. So that results in 12 teams playing at the same time. Staff must know that there's not enough parking to allow this, and I request that staff no longer approve soccer to utilize multiple fields. Just have them schedule their games at different times. San Gregorio Park's only ingress and egress is off of Via San Gregorio. That is a street that was designed for traffic only to access homes in Short Cliffs. There was never a park when it was designed. It doesn't even have a continuous sidewalk for these families to use, and they are forced to park blocks away because of organizations' non-compliance. It's a very easy fix. Stop allowing multiple field usage and hold sports organizations to the conditions of their agreement. Don't prevent them from playing. Just make them schedule their time so that the parking can come and go and not create an unsafe condition. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are no more requests for speaker at this, for this item. So it would be an appropriate time to ask if anyone has a motion regarding Elite Soccer League.
I have a question, please, regarding this request. Director Wiley, is there?
Susan, can you use your mic?
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you. I just turned that off too. Director Wiley, is there something that we can do to be sure that teams are actually filling out these records properly so you know how many games are going on at one time? How do you think we should best manage that at the sports park?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So part of our efforts in the youth sports subcommittee is to review our process of partnership, including that other element of monitoring the partnership partnership groups that we have. I believe that right now it is the honor system, and staff put a lot of effort into, as I mentioned earlier, checking gaming circuit schedules, going to a lot of external websites to ensure that user groups are being honest and coming forward with information about their game schedules. We are right now kicking off kind of into the spring season. Most of our user groups have started their spring season, so we've requested game schedules. And once we receive those, we will review them and either ask for greater buffers in between games or look to have additional field space. It becomes an issue as groups continue to grow and expand, which is another message that my sports staff are really pushing with these partner groups, that unfortunately we don't have the field space to continue to expand our programs. We don't have an enormous amount of soccer fields. We don't have lights on every soccer field. So the play has to be limited. And I think that's a really critical piece in how we look at our partnership groups. So for monitoring moving forward, I have a brand new team of sports staff. I'm finally fully staffed. It's been almost 9 months since I've been fully staffed in that area. So that's great news. That gives more oversight of each group, and I know that my sports coordinator checks in multiple times a day with each of these groups, because in staff's opinion, it's not only the games that are the issue, it's practices as well. We see regularly that fields are reserved and then they go unused, which is kind of the opposite of what we're talking about here with overuse, but underuse is also a problem. To reserve a field and then not use it poses a greater problem as well. So I think at this point, slight of coming forward with a new policy, my goal is to have staff be very much more engaged at this level, and I haven't had those resources previously. So the other element is leaning into our park ranger program, which has been pulled and tugged in a lot of different directions recently. But the park ranger program was originally a park monitor program, started there almost 20 years ago. And the nexus in the founding of that program was to support permits, exactly what we're talking about tonight, to be able to check in on how many games are going on, who is on the field, are the lights on and nobody's on it. That was the foundation of that program, and it certainly molded, as was our community over 20 years. But that needs to be another tie-in as we look to enforce what's on a permit and what is in partnership agreements. We really need boots on the ground, and the park rangers are certainly that body. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Thank you so much for that response. I'm sure you're as equally concerned about public safety from the slides that we saw on the videos. But I've been up there a couple of times, and there is a public safety issue with all the cars and bicyclists and kids, et cetera, walking with parents back and forth when so many games are going on at the same time. I know that you have limited power to do what probably needs to be done, but I appreciate the fact that you're adding more park rangers to provide oversight for this situation. Is there a way that you can get together with transportation and to see if safety cones can be put out or signs put out on the fields or in the contracts that just the clubs sign? Can they note that they will obey the rules in terms of reporting their games accurately in terms of reservations and no reservations?
Yes, that's already in place, that mechanism. I want to just note that we're not adding more park rangers right now. I'm working on that with our code enforcement staff. It's a goal of ours, but they are very limited on resources and staffing as well. So that's a long-term goal of ours. I can certainly check in with our traffic engineering group and see what's possible. They've done a number of studies and can take some really good looks at that area recently, and I'll see if there's anything else that we can consider for safety.
That's great. Do you think you could report back to us by the next meeting?
I'm happy to do so, yes.
Pardon me?
Yes, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much.
Before we make a motion, can I make one comment?
Yes.
So, Ruth, I'm very empathetic to the traffic on San Gorgonio, so I understand your point of view. But I want to point out, whether it's Little League, ASO, or Elite using those fields, those are the home teams, so some of the traffic comes also from the away teams. So some of the traffic isn't necessarily the responsibility of the local teams, it's coming from away people that are having to drive to the fields. So I just wanted to make sure that's a clear point. It's not just the people from San Clemente using the fields, it's away teams using the fields. And more likely they're driving there.
Sam, oh, go ahead.
Might I make a motion that we move forward with granting the gold level partnership to Elite, but with some additional instructions that, number one, we need to have more clarity with their applications in the future, being sure that they're verifying their information, and also that they're following the rules that are set forth in their agreement, which some of them are stated about the scheduling of games and so forth, and just add that there's additional directions as part of their, awarding this to them, and with the caveat again, as you mentioned, in 1 year, it's going to be reviewed again, and if these are issues or problems at that point, action will be taken. So.
Does everybody understand the motion?
Don't worry.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Suzanne, I'm sorry, Errol Formaster has made a motion to follow the staff recommendation with certain additions. Susan Ambrose has seconded the motion. Let's take a vote on this. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay, and any nays? I can tell from the, do we all have ayes from here?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have 6 ayes and 1 abstention from Emilio Weinstein. All right. So this motion has passed, and with that, we can move into the next order of business, which is Section 6, new business. Section A is a request for a fee waiver from the Hawaiian Surf Club of San Onofre.
Good evening, Commissioners. Samantha Wiley, Beaches Parks and Recreation Director. This evening's report in front of you is, as it states, a request for a fee waiver for the Polynesian Festival. This is a long-standing community event that's gone on for a number of decades in San Clemente. They previously applied for a fee waiver in 2020, I want to say 2019, 2020. They were granted that fee waiver, and then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, so they paused it, and they brought it back in 2021, and then they've had some changes in their group, and so they again paused their event in 2022, but they're excited to come back in 2023. So for this commission, this is really a pathway forward to potential partnership with the city, meaning the city in the future would waive fees and it wouldn't continue to come back to the commission. The partnership policy states it requires 2 fee waivers, and then it can come back for consideration of partnership. This is a waiver of rental fees, so the use of the community center, the grounds, and the Ole Hansen Fireside Room specifically, and then the waiver of their amplified sound fee as well. And those are all part of the special event permit process. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
What is the fee that's being waived?
This year it's $1,245.
So, Sam, I have a question. The recommendation from the staff is it reads, not to exceed $1,245 associated with the, I'm sorry, before that, it reads, recommend that the city council approve a one-time fee waiver, but it sounds like from what you just said, if we approve this, that would extend for a few more years.
No, so the evenings would only apply this year, so it's one time. They would have to come back to staff in 2024 potentially and say, we want another fee waiver and we want to now pursue the partnership process, which they would then qualify for should council and commission approve this.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions? We have no public comment request for this section. Is it time to make a motion?
I'll do it. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the one-time fee waiver for all rental fees not to exceed $1,245 associated with the 2023 Polynesian Festival in Luau.
I second the motion.
All right, so let's take this to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, so Doreen Campo Piano has moved to stay in line with the staff recommendation for a fee waiver for Hawaiian Surf Club. It was seconded by Amelia Weinstein, and the vote passes unanimously. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so moving into section 6, part B, Richard T. Steed Memorial Park Master Plan Update Environmental Review.
Okay, so this evening is again, kind of a little bit of a returning item, but new to some of the faces of this commission. This is the, again, staff are seeking to confirm the previous recommendation from December 14th of 2021, which recommended council approve the site-specific master plan just for Steed Park. We're not looking at any of the other 4 parks tonight. Staff have finally come to the very close end of the environmental review process that's required of the master plan, just for Steed Park. So at this point, making changes could potentially change the environmental review, so we're just seeking to hopefully get commission's recommendation again on this plan as it's presented in the report this evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. I do want to note that the final environmental draft document will be available for the commission and the public. It has to go through a 30-day public process to get any feedback, so the city can either respond to questions or potentially relook at the plan if there are concerns. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions if there are any tonight.
I have a question, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Director Wiley, I'm a little confused why we would want to approve this now when we haven't seen the environmental report. I'd like to see that before I vote on something of this measure.
So the environmental reviews are not typically something that the Beaches, Parks and Recreation Commission reviews. That was typically under the authority of the Planning Commission or the City Council. And at this point, City Council will have the opportunity to review the final environmental study, if you will. If there's hesitancy from the Commission to approve or recommend approval, you certainly could make a motion that you recommend to approve the plan with the notion that the environmental impact is little to no impact, or the commission could certainly go that way if you should desire.
Thank you. That would be my recommendation.
I have a question. With all the discussions that have happened in City Council over the same issue in the last 2 meetings or 3 meetings, it seems like, I know that there was discussions about how to move forward with your next stage with number of pickleball courts and all those other issues. But what we're talking about here is just the overall master plan and proceeding with the master plan, having our support versus you already did from the commission and the previous commission, to keep moving forward with that. It's not at all setting that as what's happening in this first phase or anything of these next steps, because that's really under City Council preview, correct?
Yeah, that's a great question again. I understand that this process seems different, if you will, and certainly council choosing to look at pickleball ahead of most things has changed the look of what is a normal process. So we are essentially paralleling the environmental as well as potentially looking to design the pickleball facility. So those are working hand in hand. We really wouldn't be able to do any type of official work on the design of that pickleball facility without landing the environmental, because we don't want to overstep ourselves. So again, what happens this evening, staff will continue this forward. It will continue to council, and we will consider any comments this evening that the commission provides. That will be included in the staff report, as well as the history from the December 2021 meeting as well. That will be all packaged up and delivered to council as well.
Just one follow-up with that. The one thing that was brought up in council was when we were discussing this, first it was 4 and then it was 8. And some of the points that you brought up in that meeting had to do with that you're still moving forward with the overall design, because as we all know with construction projects, if you take and you don't have the overall master plan of it, you're hoping to eventually build 16 courts, and you move forward with 8, and you don't do the infrastructure in your plan, you're just going to be making your costs much more dramatic over time, where if you plan it out correctly and you know what those final steps are that you want, and they design it with that intent, it keeps your costs down. And I just would like to make that point with the department moving forward in your recommendations to council.
Yeah, certainly that's the goal with the master plan, is to have a whole package that's ready to go, and phasing with any park is really important, and especially when in a city like San Clemente has a great heavy look at financial burden that could be imposed by any development, and that includes not just initial development but ongoing maintenance costs, because that's kind of the other A to Z component. So that would be absolutely a big piece of this, is looking at the whole site. And then from here, it does then give some opportunity in future budget years to say, okay, well, Steed Park has been approved, and we'd really like to see about designing, the pump track area is the next space we want to focus on. And get council, again, get the design approval, and then that can then trigger funding opportunities from there.
Any additional questions? Yes, Jonathan? All right, we do have 2 requests to address the commission. The first one is, for section 6B, the first one is Dave Hack. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk briefly. I'm Dave Hack. I'm a resident of San Clemente, and I'm a weekly pickleball player. As a former tennis player, I do recognize the difference between 32 people playing pickleball and 2 people or 4 people playing tennis. That's a huge difference. The soundproofing that was put up, though it ruined the view, is effective, at least from my perspective. I don't know how others might feel there. As you're looking at this, it says Steed on the agenda. The previous December 13th meeting was confusing to me. I wasn't sure what the scope of that meeting was. I'd like a little more clarity when you put the agenda together, because to me it's a multi-park plan, and to me the San Gorgonio courts are the critical path. Steed seems like that's the big picture going over there. So I'm curious to have some definition around what your plan might look like for first putting in the courts at San Gorgonio, to make sure that those are placed to resolve the noise issues, since they're over by the freeway, but also that allows the tennis courts to then be repurposed as they originally were. Second, I'd heard suggestions of put in some urgent courts over at Steed. The problem with that is it doesn't solve the San Gorgonio issue, which seems much more urgent and much more direct to solve, since that's a separate area set aside. So I'd like to see some consideration of that, and also more clarity on the plan associated. I do support, like all the people the many people I saw on the agenda, 16 courts over at Steed and putting in 4. I would rather have 8, since we have 8 now, I'd rather see 8 at San Gorgonio. I don't know if that's feasible, but that would seem reasonable since the growth of pickleball. There are more classes going on. I've introduced 10 people since COVID began. My wife and I play all the time. We've introduced 10 more people to pickleball. It's going to continue to grow. We're attacking what existed as a need 2 years ago, not a need that's going to be in the future. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, San Clemente city resident declines full name.
My only concern on this agendized item is that this council is being asked to recommend, this committee is being asked to recommend that the council approve the second draft master plan, and yet the majority of this committee has never agreed to it to begin with, because there was a changeover of commissions. So I again go back to my thought that why don't you agendize that the current committee revisit the 5-park master plan, so that you all know what it consists of and the details, the costs that were never discussed, before you commit to asking the council to approve it when the majority of you have not. That's all. Thank you.
All right, so at this time, we can call for a motion.
Further discussion?
We need a motion to discuss.
I'll move that this commission confirm its December 14, 2021 recommendation that the city council approve a second draft design of the Steed Memorial Park Master Plan.
Second.
I'm sorry, I thought I was asking for discussion.
Yes, we are going to move into discussion right now.
Okay, all right.
So,
Well, based on the motion and the second, are you ready to begin discussion?
yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm very uncomfortable with this for several reasons. One, very obviously, the point that the resident just made. None of us have been along and know all of the information about the decisions that were made about Steed Park. And many decisions were made that we don't even know about and not followed through with that we don't even know about. I think it would behoove this commission to get all of the information and a historical record of the decisions that were made from prior commissions, so we know what's missing and what's not, and what is in the best interest of families, of children playing in the parks, etc., but particularly San Gorgonio. So I would make a second motion to agendize this again until we have further information. After all, Director Wiley said she would look into that and report back in April. I'd like to agendize this in April and have further discussion with the benefit of the information she will bring us in April.
Is there a second for this alternate motion? All right, so we will revert to the original motion, and that is was made by Jennifer Elliott and seconded by,
Yes.
and seconded by Rob
I'm
Fryerson.
sorry, can I have another comment before we go with
Yes,
that?
yes.
Couple things. One, if, these plans that go before commission and have been decided by previous commissions, we really can't, and it moves forward, we can't, each time that this group changes, we can't be always relooking at things that people have looked at before, or things will never move forward. So the basics of taking, let's go back and redo it after you look through all what happened and all of the public meetings that they had and all the different things, we can't go bring that to surface and redo it again. We will never get anywhere with city government. But I understand the point about this being made here. I think that the city council has made a priority and given instruction that they want to move forward with Steed Park. The master plan is still to be considered by them whether they move forward with any of the other steps. Right now, they're just wanting to really move forward with Steve Park and also move forward with just a pickleball courts, as per the directions. So I think that we need to move forward with that plan and let them keep moving that, because if we slow it all down, all it's gonna do is go back to square one and just churn around. The overall master plan is not what we're discussing right here, we're just taking the one park that's being brought before us. And I'm still not totally clear why we're needing to do this vote versus it's already happened in the past. But I guess there's some need for us to just show our support of the previous council's vote on this portion of the master plan. Samantha, is that correct? I'm just trying to understand the real purpose for our vote on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the intent tonight, is just because it's been over a year since that previous consideration. That was the want of really our team that oversees our CEQA process, which is the community development team. They hold those standards, and this is really just making sure all of our boxes are checked and very thorough as well. So that's the effort tonight.
May I make a comment as well? So, as the previous commission adopted a recommendation based on Steve Park, when you try to do things in different phases, you still have to do, CEQA as, and all the testing and the studies based on, kind of what the original plan was. Otherwise, you end up, kind of doing a half part of it, and then you have to go back and, get the environmental, studies done, if you want to make changes. So the idea being is that we reconfirm the commitment to, our recommendation for draft 2 of Steve Park in its entirety. The CEQA that has been, going on right now is based on that second draft. So, you're really covering everything, and there can be conversation about phasing for, just portions of it by city council, when we do that. So, but moving forward with a different plan, we paid for a draft 1 and a draft 2, and, made a recommendation to forward it. And so some of the steps that have gone on since then have been based on that overall plan. So we're just trying to reiterate our recommendation for that right now. Right?
And I'll just add that I agree with Errol, that I just don't think it makes sense to sort of, having to go back and revisit what a previous commission already did. That's just, no way, I think, for us to kind of continue moving forward with a lot of these things. And then that would change the entire environmental analysis, which is already well underway and almost to completion. And so, I agree.
So there's a motion and a second?
We have 2 motions on the floor right now, I believe. One is, and then we need to address the most recent one, and that is the discussion. Can you form your last phrase in the form of a motion that you don't want to change?
Oh, no, there was no second to that. There was no second to Susan's motion.
Yes,
and
no,
then
I was agreeing with them, and then this is.
My motion is on the floor.
Yeah.
It's just Jennifer's.
Okay, so can you reiterate your motion so that we all understand?
Sure. I move that this commission confirm its December 14th, 2021 recommendation
That the city council approve the second draft design of the Steve Memorial Sports Park Master Plan.
And Rob, you second that?
I did, and now I'm ready to vote no. Sorry.
Okay.
I think I'm agreeing with everybody that, it doesn't
Okay,
make
so
sense.
we have a
or it's not
motion, we
fair.
have a second, we have clarification. Let's take this to a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed. I'm surprised by some votes on that, isn't it?
You're opposed?
Okay, I'm opposed.
Okay, so. Paul and Susan. All right, so the motion on the floor passes 5-2 with Rob, Mr. Firestein, and Susan Ambrose dissenting. All right, with that, we can move into new business, section 6C, miniature golf proposal for Vista Hermosa Sports Park lease site.
If I may, I'm going to recuse myself. One of my neighbors is a principal with Salty Turf, so I'm not going to participate.
Okay, so this evening is a report. Staff are seeking commission's determination and recommendation on if the proposed miniature golf facility and project is an appropriate use of this space at the Vista Hermosa Sports Park. I think in the staff report, it does cover that the project site that we're looking at is identified. It is above the San Clemente Aquatic Center, adjacent to the solar panels. It's a very large area of undeveloped land. For context and history, this land is already designated in the Vista Hermosa Master Plan as a lease opportunity site. That was changed in about 2011, right before the park was opened officially in 2012, when the city at that time received an unsolicited proposal for a miniature golf facility. At that time, this proposal came to the commission, and the commission recommended going forward with changing the master plan. So tonight, we're in a little bit of a different situation because the master plan has already been adopted as a lease opportunity area. So as it states in the staff report, there was a full RFP that was done. It was posted onto our public bidding site, and we received one interested qualified proposal from Salty Turf. I will say that we have gotten a number of unsolicited proposals over the years, and this is the group that has actually submitted their proposal through the right RFP channels. So with that, we do have the individuals here for short presentations, so you can have a better taste of what they're looking to do. I'd like to invite, if it's appropriate, Terry, to invite them up to do a presentation. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I did send it to your email. I don't know if you can access it still. You can't do it.
I'm sorry.
Well, thanks for having us. My name is Andrew. I'm here with Marcus and Jeff, the principals here, founders of Salty Turf. We're here to propose and start to put together a plan for putting together a mini golf course, which is part of that original plan that was going to be in the Vista Hermosa Sports Park. I've been here in San Clemente for 15 years. A wife, 3 kids. We use all the beaches, park, and rec services. They're fantastic. We use junior lifeguards. We're coaches on soccer, different little leagues. Really enjoy all the things that happen there. And every time we go by the Vista Hermosa Sports Park, which we absolutely love to be part of, we see that piece of land and we keep thinking to ourselves, man, we were here when we took our kids from water babies to Ole Hansen Pool, then to the Vista Hermosa Sports Park pool, and that whole process of seeing that sports park be built up and be brought to life, we really want to be part of that next stage of where it gets developed. So for us, it's a gem inside of San Clemente. We really enjoy that park, and we want to make it that much better by being part of that next step of bringing in a mini golf course that can bring outdoor, healthy, and exciting at times for parents, children, the seniors in the community, and then couples that are out for fun date night. So we're really excited about that. We want to bring that to the commission and to the city, and very excited about that. I want to give maybe Marcus and Jeff a chance to pass this out, and then I can talk about the park.
Good evening, Commissioner. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much. My wife and I have lived in San Clemente our entire lives, which is 39 years. I am blessed enough to have 4 beautiful children. Hopefully, they too get to live in San Clemente for their entire life. My eldest daughter is 12. I've got an 11-year-old son, a 7-year-old son, and a 5-year-old son. My wife is for sure the better half of us. She's unbelievable. But as Andrew said, we're very passionate about San Clemente. I'm active in the community. I currently coach both of my boys in baseball through San Clemente Little League, active in the community with regards to donating to local charities, and as Andrew kind of alluded to, we're just very excited to push this project forward. We've been working on it for over 12 months now, and we feel like the Vista Hermosa Sports Park is just the perfect location for this project. We plan to develop it, construct it, and manage it, and we've done a really good job of putting together the proposal thus far. We've secured funding, so we are in a really, really good position to move this forward. Happy to take on any questions you guys may have as well, and I'll let Marcus introduce himself as well.
Mine's more brief. I'm a COVID move here, so I moved here 2.5 years ago from La Cañada area, and actually grew up on Palomar Mountain, so I'm a country boy. I grew up on a cattle ranch down here, so wonderful to be here. I just credit to the city, just kind of saved my youngest son's life, I think, moving here during COVID, so very grateful to the city. I'm neighbors with Jeff, known Andrew for some time as well, and just, you know, as you kind of move into, you live one place and then move to another, and maybe y'all lived here for a long, long time, but such a gratitude for being in a city where we came from an area where it was very, I don't know, just very tense area, and it's wonderful to live in a place like San Clemente where you have these opportunities. So I just want to kind of echo what they have to say, which is just to be a part of the community, to do things to improve the community, but keep the feel and the wholesomeness of San Clemente the way it has been. It's the small town feel. I think a lot of what you've seen if you've looked at the presentation when Andrew's going to present, it's, you know, keeping things really in the vein of San Clemente, the whole vibe of San Clemente, I think is going to be really important. And I'm obviously the business person in this group, because you can tell by the way I dress now. And then the white hair, but appreciate your consideration.
Maybe just a quick walkthrough too, so you guys have an idea of what we're thinking. So we'd be looking at like a 36-hole miniature golf course. You'd have 18 holes on either side, east and west side of that 1 acre parcel. You'd have a 600 square foot Ole Hansen style building with a deck out front for people to enjoy little drinks or ice creams afterwards that they're done. Each of those 18 holes may be representing landmarks and something around the surf breaks that we have here in San Clemente to keep it very local and exciting around the essence of what is here in San Clemente already. We're looking at all the flora and fauna, all the plants to be something local and something that we can, you know, look at for drought resistance and make sure that those are things that, you know, obviously adhere to the style. And we've been through the Centennial Plan, we've been through the Master Park Plan, we've been through all the different resources that the city has put together over the last, call it decade, that we have been able to bring in all those styles and shapes into what we have in that proposal we submitted to the RFP. Oh, the other thing that's really interesting about this is that there is the only miniature golf courses that are around here that would be in any way a competition are more than, if you're familiar with this, more than 30 miles away. So it's 4 of them, but they're more than 30 miles away, so everyone has to drive 30 to 45 minutes to get to anything like this around here. So we have a really unique opportunity to bring something to San Clemente that comes through that gateway of La Plata area, that goes, it services the entire city, to be able to service and work with the people who are right around San Clemente and those other municipalities, as well as everyone in the city and the families and the different things that we bring into that one miniature golf course.
Or if you have kids that swim and you're in between, like, the 3-hour heats, you need something to do.
Yeah. And so I basically wanted to just end with the fact that we're extremely excited to work with the commission. We're really excited that, you know, you put in so much time and energy in this, and we want to try to complement those things, and everything in our proposal speaks to the fact that we're working on and trying to create that same community feel, use local landmarks to do that, and then create an enjoyable outdoor experience for families and seniors and kids alike. So.
All right. Samantha, as a special presentation, commissioners are allowed to ask questions at this point?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. I open the floor to questions for the secretary.
So I have a question. You're talking also where the soccer fields are as well, right?
No, we're actually just talking the acre land next to the solar heating.
Okay.
That's there, so it's just that one parcel that's actually across the street from the soccer fields. It's not the undeveloped soccer fields over on the side. That's where the carnival takes place. We
Okay.
actually are working with the Friends of San Clemente to understand our ability to kind of work with them and collaborate with them basically throughout those events to actually make them enhanced to that section.
So I don't know if you've thought this far, is it miniature golf plus arcade plus food, or is it truly just miniature golf?
We're thinking miniature golf with a facility to service, pizza, drinks, those kinds of things. We're not doing a full restaurant and that kind of environment.
And drinks, alcohol as well?
We do not have alcohol in the original proposal.
Okay.
I have a question, please. Do you think this, the miniature golf, I'm sorry, no, my son. Do you think this proposal will have enough parking spaces to handle the number of people that you think might come? And what is that number of people allowed on a golf course at one time?
So I guess the theoretical maximum is probably 36 holes, and you multiply by 2 or 3, because not everyone has a 4-person crew that they go with, so you're in those kind of numbers. And we have been working with the team to understand how to utilize all parking spaces in the Vista Hermosa Sports Park. So if you look at the ones over near the football field that are not used as often, we would be maintaining and starting to repair the pathway that exists from that direction, as well as the one to the soccer field. So you'd actually have 2 entrances that come into this mini golf, majorly serviced by the parking spaces probably that are open several times in the year. The other point to this is that in the original plans, I think there's probably some accommodation for bathroom spaces and trash, and also for parking spots. And so we're relying on some of that original work done with the park.
So is your answer, you have ample parking, or you're doing parking for 2 different sites?
Yeah.
Yes, on both of those?
I can answer that.
Yeah, I think
So Hermosa as a park was actually, it's designed to accommodate all of the anticipated future uses and development of that park site. So what the parking you're seeing now is actually more than enough parking for what's currently there, and is expected to accommodate growth. Aside from something like the Carnival weekend, where you're seeing a huge influx of parking. Now, when you take into consideration a weekend like the Carnival, or maybe a major soccer tournament or a swim meet, the use of that park could change in the future, where something like the Carnival, potentially with a facility like this that has a volume of people attending that, plus the Carnival, plus the soccer game, plus swimming, that's when you get into, through the SEP process for the Carnival, that they may be required to provide a shuttle service, because that SEP is influxing the people into the park. So those are considered kind of special circumstances, but as it stands today, the parking that's there is there because it is to accommodate the entire build-out of that park.
Thank you, Director Wiley.
Can I just ask a question? Yeah, so my question is, in the original master plan, was a mini golf course considered specifically? Was that part of the, on the map?
Yes and no. So originally, no. That was kind of unidentified land that they weren't sure what they were gonna do with. It came to, and again, in 2010, 2011, through a proposal, and at that time, that proposal was a mini golf. Now that iteration eventually turned into a request for a wave pool, plus an alcohol service bar type of facility. And so it kind of morphed, but there was an agreement that was struck, there was a lease agreement, and it went very south for that group of investors and eventually the city. And so it's very much gone by the wayside for about a decade now. So the master plan as it exists today, it's not specific to what could go there. It just says lease of property, which is intended for parks and recreation amenities. So mini golf fits that category, as did a wave pool at that time. But right now, it's mini golf is what's being proposed.
Okay. And then what about, because I do have a concern about just parking, just because I know, between Carnival and swim meets and stuff, I've seen that parking lot full as it is, with the current use, so I would be concerned that this would really put a strain on that. And then also the future uses too, because we still have, is it 2 undeveloped fields, is that right, or 1?
Yeah, a good point as well. I want to say that what you're looking at tonight is just the concept. We're looking to approve that use. Traffic and parking and all of that, this all has to go through planning commission still, for design review, and eventually also to city council. So there are many layers beyond the commission. This commission's responsibility is to opine on, is this an appropriate use of the space and does it match that master plan, if you will. And then traffic and parking, it could come up that additional parking is needed and the applicant needs to work with the city to figure out where that could fit. That could come up, I don't know, but that comes in a later process.
Okay, thank you.
And, cool.
Thank you, Earl. In addition to traffic and parking, will planning also consider noise issues?
Yes, so that would be similar to the CEQA process. Noise will be considered, as will lighting, and as they mentioned, the foliage and any kind of planting material, all of that will be considered through the design process.
Thank you.
That was one of mine, was about the noise when you just saw this location, and then behind that area, you've got a hill there, and then you have residents back behind there. The noise, of course, will be addressed and reviewed as part of the process.
Yeah, and again, reverting back to the past and the previous agreement that was struck, there was public noticing that was done within 300 feet. That happened at the planning commission level, the council level, so there is ample notification that goes on once the project is moving forward.
And then just in general, I love your enthusiasm and also your support of the city. And I think it's a great idea, of course, and this has no impact to this process, is just my concern about your success. The location to me is not out on the boulevard and available for drive-by kind of traffic. This is a place where people are gonna have to know that it's there to be able to go there and to visit your business. And in most of the cases that I know about, with miniature golf, they usually have always added on all these other types of services and things to be able to make themselves profitable. They add on the arcades, they add on the batting cages, they add on the go-karts, because that's then how they can make the money. So I'm just concerned about, you guys really doing your financial analysis and being sure that this is gonna work for you, because I hate the city get in bed with you, you gotta build this all out, and it doesn't last for you, and then all of a sudden, we've got the old miniature golf course sitting there that we have to figure out what we're gonna do with in the future, And your experiences with opening these types of businesses from scratch and having the expertise to know how to pull it off, because it takes a lot, so. Just word of advice, that's all that is, but just after looking through everything and seeing and then hearing your presentation.
Any additional questions? Yeah, we have no public comment items for this section, so, yeah, so we'll call a motion.
I like this idea, and I think it's something that our town, the way we're styled, the way we handle our recreation, I think this would feed right into, I'd like to say more passive entertainment than some of the other things that we do to amuse ourselves and entertain ourselves and recreate. So I'm going to make the motion following the staff recommendation that I am moving that we determine that this proposed use of land as a miniature golf facility is appropriate within the Vista Hermosa Sports Park, and request staff engage in exclusive negotiations with Salty Turf LLC.
I second the motion.
Second, okay, with that, we are ready to go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So this motion is passed unanimously.
No, one recruits.
What's that?
One recruital.
Oh, that was so long ago. You were my station. I feel like we've been talking about this for a while. All right, so 6 votes for yea, no nays, and 1 abstention from Rob Firestein. So motion passes.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Congratulations.
All right, we're ready to move into section 7A. Actually, Sam, do I need to make a motion to adjourn at a later time? Or does this, since it's after 8 o'clock?
You have until 9, so you should be fine.
All right, so we can move into section 7, communications. Part A, Beaches, Parks, and Recreation Director Report.
I don't have any further updates on the site-specific master plan update. I do want to share that I have a pool lifeguard update actually. So our success has been met with increasing wages for our lifeguards, and we are finally adding hours to the aquatic center. So I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. In February, the aquatic center will now open on Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 5:30 a.m. to noon, in addition to the beach club being open from 5:30 a.m. till noon on those days as well. With this change, the water aerobics classes will return to their aquatic center, regular programming, which is a great move for them and the facility as well. And then beginning in March, the beach club hours will transition to 8 a.m. to 12 o'clock noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is because many of our ocean lifeguards are going to be returning to the beach. So we saw a bit of an influx, which is a good thing, with our ocean lifeguards supporting our aquatics operations, but they do go back to the beach. So we're hoping that that change can be effective until, excuse me, May 31st. And then summer hours are still yet to be determined. We have a large hiring fair that we're going to be doing on April 1st at the Aquatic Center. That will be covering recruitment efforts for recreation leader staff, as well as pool lifeguards. And so we're hoping to capture a number of more lifeguards and rec leaders as well. And we're still in the process of going through a part-time hourly class and comp study that could additionally impact our pool lifeguarding numbers. So I think that's great news. And then the only other update I wanted to share, this is a little bit of a recent breaking news. I've responded to a number of inquiries from the public this week regarding the San Luis Rey Tennis Court #2. I don't know if this commission is aware, but we have closed it temporarily. It is a temporary closure. It's now in some dire straits with this court surfacing. We've got exposed rebar and just uneven playing surfaces that makes it an unsafe court to play on. Those courts are subject to a lot of natural groundwater in that area coming off from the golf course. That's what it's subject to. So unfortunately, the recent weather activity with the rains has really swelled the groundwater, and the courts broke through some of that rebar. So those courts were resurfaced recently, which means that unfortunately it's not as easy as just resurfacing it again. It was kind of its last leg. So at this point, the message to the public and to the commission is it's not an indefinite closure, but we do need to seek the funding approval from council, because it's we're getting costs right now, but it will likely be folded into the fiscal year 23-24 budget as a maintenance project. So with that, I don't have any further updates tonight.
Okay, anyone have any questions of Sam?
I do. The tree that tipped over onto the pickleball courts at San G, did that cause damage? I don't even know the status right now. They're not there recently, but I assume it's not there. But did it cause damage?
Yeah, so it did damage the fencing significantly. The fencing's been repaired. Now we're waiting to repair some of the court surfacing. There's a large crack in that court. Again, this court was redone, and so we are working to get that repaired, and we're hoping to see that repair land within the next 1 to 2 weeks, and then reopen those 2 courts.
Is it being used now, or not?
They're closed.
Yeah,
Those 2 courts are closed, yes.
Any additional questions? All right, we can move on to section 8, items from the commission, starting with section A, subcommittee reports. First on the docket is coastal items.
Joanne, would you mind if I go first, since I'm the first day there?
Sure.
I'm going to be very short tonight. I'm very involved in activities with the Ocean Protection Council, which is a wing of the governor's cabinet, so to speak, but they don't have a cabinet position, but they're very involved in
Is the
all
light
kinds
on?
of.
I can't hear.
Yeah, can you hit that?
I'm sorry. Let me just start, thank you very much. I just was saying to you that I'm very involved in the activities and participating in the Ocean Protection Council workshops, etc. They are a wing of the governor's office. They don't have a cabinet position, but they do have a director who works and reports directly to the governor. So this is a very powerful committee on coastal issues, and I will bring you meeting after meeting information about the things that I've been participating in. And if you're interested in any of them, I will forward all the backup material to Miley, God bless her, who's agreed to do this. If you're interested only, you can contact Miley and she will forward the packet of materials that I went through. And should you have any questions about those, you can feel free to contact me. So one of them, I just spent some time 2 weeks ago with a very lengthy agenda that probably had about 200 pages. I'll bring that back next time and just give you a paragraph summary of each of those. But I did participate in the ocean conservation, the update on the California's marine protected areas, which are literally lots of land and ocean that are specifically designed to protect marine life as it is, and with enrichment and growth. It's a wonderful program that's going along. There's 124 of these areas in California right now that kind of collectively move along together and share ideas, etc. So it's been very successful. I'll keep you posted on that. The next thing I just wanted to share, and the last thing I wanted to share is Coastal Quest also is a nonprofit organization that does a lot of things to help beaches and environmental issues, etc. They're having a series of workshops coming up, and again, I will forward this on to Miley in case after this meeting or tomorrow or a week from now you think you might want to be interested in it. The three workshops they're going to be talking about is exploring coastal 30-30 solutions. Let me remind you that 30-30 means 30% reduction of any kind of pollution affecting water or land by the year 2030, and it is a proclamation from Governor Newsom's office that was done a year or two ago. So everybody, every agency, every organization, every department in Sacramento adheres to this policy. So this is hearing speakers from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the California Ocean Protection Council, and other coastal leaders who will be sharing details on Coastal 30-30 framing and national priorities. The second session will be learning about funding priorities, another very important one. So we will hear from the philanthropic community along with NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, about funding priorities and programs. So coming from two different reaches of government with more funding sources, that's a good thing. And the last one is, again, joining to the Coastal 30-30 community for a conversation about funding in the communities. So you're meeting others and stakeholders in communities and learning about those funding opportunities and some of these that you can share with your colleagues as in consortium building, etc. So when I attend these, but I'll send you the dates of these, the dates and times. If you're interested in signing up yourself, please do, but I'll get this information to Miley no later than next Monday, but most likely sooner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Why don't we just go ahead and go down the line in order of what you guys' names are. Julie, would you like to add?
Yeah, I just have a couple of things to add. So on February 1st, our coastal subcommittee, we met and we discussed what I wanted to do was kind of go over the plan that we had for this year and sort of see where we were. So the first thing we talked about was the beach nourishment and restoration, and we talked about and agreed that we would update the coastal resiliency roadmap, something I had put together for the previous commission with recommendations to council with a lot of the things that we're talking about getting a city staff person supporting the
the beach nourishment project, et cetera. So there's been a lot going on, so I would like to update that, and then our coastal subcommittee will work on that next month and hopefully have it available for the next meeting for everyone to look at and hopefully vote on. So there's that, and then the other thing we talked about was really with the water quality updates. I think Susan mentioned to me this today that we've had a couple of beaches that have exceeded water quality standards of late. So we wanted to get some updates on that, the status of our environmental grants program, and then our plastics reduction initiative, which was looking to put water bottle refill stations along the beach trail. And Samantha had suggested that Dave Rubensor maybe come to maybe our next meeting, if we have room on the agenda, to provide some updates for us on that. And then the next thing is something that we talked about during the nature-based solutions. So this was the review of the council meeting on October 7th, where they just talked about developing a partnership with the city of Oceanside and talking about this dredging consortium. So that is something I support, and I'm going to be kind of looking at and working on the side. And I had sent in a comment letter to all the council members that, because what was on the table was rainbow dredging, which is not something I support, and instead I had some other ideas that I wanted the council to look at. So I'm happy to share that email. I think I sent it to the coastal subcommittee, but I could send it to others if there's interest. Yeah, okay. And then the other things is just some things I'm working on in the background. So I contacted the California Parks and Recreation, which is formerly Department of Boating and Waterways, to discuss their grant program for beach restoration. And so they have a really good program, and they could fund something like a dredge consortium, and they would provide 85% of that funding, and that grant will be open at the end of this year, and I'm hopefully going to be working with the city to encourage them to apply for that grant. And then the last thing I wanted to do was, I've been really active with Save Our Beaches and acting as a technical advisor as just a member of the public. And what I'd like to do is become a formal kind of liaison between DPNR and Save Our Beaches. So kind of similar to what we do with like Friends of San Clemente and Pier Pride. So I guess I would like to put a motion out there that I be appointed as the official representative to Save Our Beaches.
From Beaches, Parks and Recreation? I mean, from this commission?
Yes.
I don't think that we should have a representative to a nonprofit. They're not even a nonprofit yet. Right now, it's just a citizens group.
We can't hear.
What's wrong with me? The button pusher, yes. I think that it's not necessary to have somebody from this group officially represent Beaches, Parks and Recreation. We're here dealing with a group of citizens right now that are concerned about the beaches, et cetera, and making progress, and that's wonderful. But they are another organization with there's other groups of people that do the same kinds of things. I don't think that we should put a city name on this from this commission. I think that if you want to do things on your own and work as their technical advisor, et cetera, I think that's a wonderful idea, but I don't support creating a position to help an organization. It's an organization, it's a group body, and I don't mean any ill will about that at all. I'm first in line to help groups that want to do good things to improve our beaches and to help remedy our beaches. I just don't think that is what we should be doing with the duties of this commission. We are working for the city.
So you are making an alternate motion?
Well, I am making a motion that I do not think that Beaches, Parks and Recreation, that it is appropriate for Beaches, Parks and Recreation Commission have a representative on the Save Our Beaches or any other community group of such.
Okay, so Susan has made a motion. Does anybody want to second that? And then we can go back to the original. And I have a question. kind of borders there. You know, this is under committee reports. Do we need to agendize this under a future agenda item to revisit in order to make a decision on it?
Yeah, I would suggest that's a good path forward. If there's a lot of discussion, that sounds like maybe needs to be talked or had, I would recommend that, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's put that as a future agenda item when we come to that point.
Okay.
All right, so we are going to add that to a future meeting in our next upcoming session. So, see, where are we? Okay, Commissioner Weinstein, did you want to add anything to updates?
With respect to Susan and Doreen, they covered everything we discussed. Best for
By
last.
the way, nice job you guys tonight, standing out as real, just knowledgeable in the area. Just really great, both of you, all of you. Okay, so we can move into donations and sponsorships, and I'll go through the same kind of order since you're first on the list.
In the interest of all of your Valentines, I defer to our chair so we can get home sooner. Happy Valentine's Day.
Me too, since I was not available for our meeting this month anyway.
All right, so I'll make this brief. The donations and sponsorships subcommittee did have a meeting where we invited different stakeholders from the city. So City Council member Gene James, Beaches, Parks, and Rec Director Samantha Wiley, Jennifer and I were there representing the subcommittee, and we also invited the president of Friends of San Clemente Beaches, Parks, and Rec as the chartered 501c3 for Beaches, Parks, and Rec. And we just really sat down and gave everybody a vision of what we were trying to accomplish, and let everybody else talk about what their vision was for each individual stakeholder. And it was a really good meeting. We're all on the same page. Everybody is aware of what we were trying to accomplish, and that is to increase and augment monies that can be spent towards future parks projects. That's all I have. So moving into the Youth Sports Park Partnership Committee. Susan Ambrose, do you want to go first?
Actually, no, I'm going to defer to, we did meet, but we selected Amelia Weinstein as our speaker on this subject because she is so.
We did, we decided that you represent us and you report.
Yes.
All right, so the
That
three
was
of us
Earl's
met.
nomination, and I seconded it because, let me add why, because Amelia is so skilled in all of these sporting activities. She could speak best to this effort.
I appreciate that. Just briefly, the main goals for the youth sports organization is field usage. So we excluded aquatics. There's 7 groups that use our fields. I went through 5 of the applications to the city. 2 I don't have, but I'll get that information soon. But the main purpose is to streamline the application. We really want proof of citizenship in San Clemente residents. Perhaps that's the utility bill, perhaps that's where the student plays at school. We would like to have a policy to ensure that players are getting at least 50% game time. And somewhat importantly, we need to reassess the fees for lights and field usage so that the city is not paying, we're not looking to make money, but this was last done in June 15th, 2015. So when Samantha has time, we're gonna look at other cities and look comparable prices and whatnot. Hopefully we'll have a meeting in March before our April meeting. I did email kind of a summary of how I think it should be streamlined, but I need more input from the committee before we finalize that.
Okay. All right, well, that's it for subcommittee items, and we'll move into section 8B, items from the commissioners, beginning with Commissioner Firestein regarding Pure Pride.
Yeah, Pure Pride had a strategic visioning session last night, which meant it was a 3-hour meeting with snacks and drinks. But the main focus was to kind of think through the large project that Pure Pride is considering, which is kind of a redesign of the entrance to the pier, all the way up from Avenida Victoria through to the pier itself. And I think there are some sketches of that. I didn't have time today to actually get a picture of that to Miley so we could look at it tonight. But I think I would also like to take some photographs and kind of bring that next time to kind of walk through that, because they're actually looking for some input now on that, and I think it would be useful to spend just a few minutes on to review it with everybody. But just to kind of give you a taste, I mean, they are talking about a significant redesign at the entrance to the pier, which would involve removing a lot of the landscape that is, if you know the stairs that come up to Avenida Victoria, and there's two staircases that are kind of 180 degrees from each other. In between those would be what they call a grand staircase that would also bring people down to the underpass that would then go on out to the pier. So that's, as you can imagine, that's a pretty major effort. So they are talking about, we went through ideas about funding, we talked about other elements that would typically go into that, and who do we need to get involved in the process even at this very early stage. So it's a very big project. It does take a lot of funding to do. I think I'd like to kind of spend a little bit of time kind of walking through the elements maybe the next time we get.
Commissioner Firestone, if I might suggest, I think that's a great idea, and I had the pleasure to attend that meeting as well. This commission might want to hear from Pure Pride, maybe in the form of a special presentation.
Okay.
If you're okay with that, I'm happy to get
sure.
that scheduled at a future meeting, if that works.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'll arrange that. Yeah.
And Rob, I believe there's a new president of Pure Pride, correct?
Yeah, we did talk about that last night. Eileen Hollis is the president.
All right, any additional Pure updates?
No.
Okay, so regarding Friends of San Clemente, Beaches, Parks and Recreation Foundation, I attended my first meeting as the liaison from Beaches, Parks and Rec. I was voted in as a non-voting member to be, maybe rediscussed on down the road. Other than that, I have no major updates from them. They're planning some of their major, kind of fundraising projects, and I will come with updates to those for the next meeting that we have next Thursday, or this Thursday. Right. So that being it, I've been writing down proposed agenda items from throughout the meeting for the next meeting. Joreen, I think you wanted to talk about potentially.
So update on water quality and water bottle refill station and grants from Dave Food and Store.
Who are you invited to the meeting?
Okay, and do you want to have an agenda item to discuss your role with
Yeah,
SOS?
yeah, Save Our Beaches, and then also as an alternative, it could be Save Our Beaches and then also to speak to council as the representative,
SOS, Oceanside,
or SOB.
SOB.
Yes. Save Our Beaches and SOS is Save Our Sand in Oceanside, that's their group.
Okay.
Then I had that agenda item regarding Director Wiley coming back with information on the history of decisions that were made and where are we now, and how much it's changed. In other words, have we, I'm not sure. Director Wiley, do you want to help me phrase the agenda item?
Yes, I am also, I'm trying to determine what the best course of action is, because the history is that's going to be some staff time, so if this is a report, I might look for at least 2 votes to get a report on it. Is this just specific to San Bernardino, or are we looking at all of the sites? And is this a separate item or under the director updates?
I think it was just towards San Bernardino because of the changes and with pickleball, et cetera. And right now, the proposed things and options for San Bernardino far surpass the space that they have. So I think it That's the part that I'm thinking of. So maybe it's just coming back with a report from you with the information of what I asked for before, is a history of decisions in those major categories that other councils passed, so we know if they've been done, if they haven't been done, why not, or should they be done? In other words, is the plan is the design of the plan now what the city council approved or what we approved? That's what I really want to know, because we're getting little bits of information here or there.
Maybe that's better served than in just an email or a memo to the commission from myself. I don't know that bringing it to a public meeting, there's not going to be action taken per se on that. So if it's history, I don't know, Terry, do you have another?
I was just gonna say that maybe we could just have either a quick update, you know, on a couple of items in your regular standing update, or this could be handled, you know, kind of offline in the name of, you know, kind of respect for time in the meetings. Yeah, just sending out
Could I
an
add
email
one?
through Miley.
Can I add that? Before I was appointed to the commission, the last commission had updated some playground equipment. It happened to be one of the parks at San Gorgonio. I don't know if we have an update on the playground equipment. I don't know how necessary that is, but I know you guys spent a fair amount of time looking at it, the designs and whatnot.
See, that's a great point right there. We need to know, we're making decisions on things and we don't know whether they're really happening or ever happening. And so I'd like to keep it as an agenda item because I think it's important to our community.
Can
And enough people have come
propose that we
before
have
us as well as.
Can we propose that we have a playground update within the, you know, standing agenda item?
Well, that's not the
For
only
parks.
thing though.
Yeah, so we don't do playgrounds that often. I'm happy to provide an update about San Gorgonio at the next meeting. I'm at the whim of the commission, so if you want to see an item about the history of San Gorgonio Park, please just tell me where to place it on the agenda. If you're looking for a staff report, or what does that look like? That's what I need to know.
And we can kind of sort through these one-on-one when we do, you know, our agenda requests before the next meeting.
Well, right now I'm requesting that this be on the next agenda in April. That's 2 months from now.
Okay.
And if we don't finish the job, then you can bring us what you found out thus far, maybe the top 3 categories, Director Wiley.
No problem, understood.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're ready to move on to the next item, which is the last and final item for today.
That's the adjournment.
And that is the adjournment of the meeting.
I move that we adjourn to the next regular meeting of Beaches Parks and Rec on Tuesday, April 11th, right here at City Hall.
I second.
All right, Rob has made a motion, Jen has made a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Thank you.